Yeah, I wanted to talk about the discussion that's going around right now, which is about character viability in fighting games, or I guess more specifically, Guilty Gear right now. Snake Eyes, who is a Potemkin player, just won Texas Showdown, which is a pretty big regional with pretty good players at it. It's not everybody talking about, what characters are viable in Guilty Gear and just kind of viability as a whole in fighting games. And I think it's a very interesting topic that there's some things that people need to hear in regards to viability in fighting games. So the first question when it comes to character viability is that, honestly, in most modern fighting games, every character can win. And what I mean by can win, that there is no situation where a character is just incapable of winning any given set. The main question of viability nowadays is more about consistency when it comes to tournaments, right? Fighting games are much bigger nowadays than they used to be. They are much better balanced, right? Back in the day, there were a lot of very imbalanced fighting games, and that's where questions of viability were more important. There were characters back in the day that just could not win in both situations. Nowadays, we don't have games like that, especially in the modern era. You don't really have characters that just can't win. But what it comes down to is consistency. We have tournaments that are very, very big now and very, very competitive. If you want to win something like Evo or Combo Breaker these days, characters in something like Guilty Gear Strive, you can win any given match. But can your character win consistently enough that you can be confident to be able to win a large bracket like a Combo Breaker or an Evo or something? That's where the question of viability kind of comes into question more, I think. And the big thing about this topic that people really don't want to hear, quite frankly, most people, and when I say most, I mean literally 99% of a game's player base, are not equipped to talk about a character's viability or the strength of the character or to make claims that a character is holding them back. I know nobody ever wants to hear this, but it is very common that many players try to argue about viabilities of characters or talk about matchups or whatever. Frankly, there are 10 to 20 players in a fighting game at any given time that are equipped enough to really be able to confidently talk about those things. I see it all the time on Twitter, I see it in Discords, I see it on YouTube comments, Twitch chats. People argue about character strength all the time, right? And now I see people arguing, see, Potemkin can win a major or can win a tournament or whatever because Snake Eyes just did it. And I see this topic from tons of people all the time that just honestly are not equipped to talk about it. And that's not flame, right? I'm not even trying to be toxic about it. It just makes sense that there's only going to be a small handful of players that are the best in the world. And unless you're the best in the world, there's going to be things that you can improve on. I mean, honestly, even the best in the world can usually improve on things still. They're not perfect. When you still have so many things to improve on as a player or understanding matchups and all of those types of things, you're not equipped to be talking about the viability of characters or the state of the meta or anything. You'd be better putting your energy into actually understanding how to do better with your character and how to do better in these matchups. It's such a better way to spend your energy than wasting time claiming that your character or a matchup or the game is holding you back. All of those things are things that everybody says, even top players, and it's always just cope. It's just cope, right? We all do it. I do it from time to time. And coping in the moment, honestly, is fine. If that's what you got to tell yourself to feel better in the moment, go right ahead. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to, as a fighting game player, step away and think to yourself, okay, I'm the problem. I need to improve. I can get better at these things. And kind of as an extension to this is another problem that I see very often, is that players will try to cling to what they see other top players say, right? You'll see top player A talk about how bad a matchup is or how a certain character isn't viable. And then people will cling to that and start parroting that sentiment that the player was given. The issue with that is that you can't just parrot what they're saying because you don't have the context or the understanding that that player has to be saying that in the first place. So instead of just repeating what they said, you should be trying to think about why they think that way and use it to kind of gain a better understanding. This is important for tier lists too. So many people see tier lists and see them as a way to argue or be like, no, there's no way this character's that good. You should be using tier lists and things like that to get better understanding of characters and matchups and how a game could be played. It's a time to understand and gain knowledge, not a time to argue and complain. It's very easy as a competitor to want to be able to just say oh yeah, this character isn't viable or this character is holding me back or whatever. It's just not productive. If you really want to be a competitor at a fighting game, you have to be able to just look at any situation and tell yourself, I'm the problem in this situation. I need to be better. I need to understand these situations better. I need to play better. And also just recognize that some situations in fighting games are just guesses. That's just kind of how it is. And part of the strategy in fighting games is try to eliminate how much of your strategy is just raw guessing. Talking about Potemkin, right? Potemkin just won Texas Showdown. We just had Snake Eyes win Texas Showdown with Potemkin, and everyone's talking about it, how like, oh, Potemkin is clearly good enough to win a major. Potemkin is a character who pretty much wins or loses on very simple situations. Do they jump your command grab or not? Do you read them jumping your command grab or not, right? Characters like that are just less consistent for competitive play because they're just based around raw guesses. There isn't much else you can do strategically to avoid that type of thing with them. So the ultimate thing about like character viability and whatnot is kind of a strange topic in fighting games because there's no definitive way to say that a fighting game character isn't really viable, especially in the last couple of years of video games. We don't have games that have super duper lopsided matchups or anything anymore. It's just not like that. Really, the only thing that comes down to character viability is the consistency of it. Fighting games have gotten so big now that consistency in your character is very valuable when it comes to tournaments. You're gonna have to win a lot of matches against very good players. So having a character that can consistently perform in those situations are what you want. So basically, to summarize it, character viability nowadays is honestly not that hot of a topic anymore. Most characters are viable. It just comes down to a situation of consistency for how big and competitive brackets are nowadays. Most people aren't equipped to be talking about character strength and matchups and all of that stuff anyways. And if someone is equipped, you shouldn't just be blindly following what they say, because being able to think for yourself and gain understanding and learning is going to be much more beneficial to you as a player overall.